Hi guys, Eric here to talk a little bit about med ball tosses. Sometimes people call these scoop tosses or oblique med ball tosses. Lots of different names for them. The premise is basically the same. People are usually looking to generate power through the core. Now remember, the core just isn't the spine and the abdominals, it's down through the hips and up through the shoulder blades and even the cervical spine as well. When this is performed correctly, we are loading the heck out of the hips and we are driving and exploding this ball. Just like any exercise, technique and excellence of execution is king. If someone is stuck in thoracic flexion, if someone has poor posture, this exercise is not for them. If someone cannot control neutral with their lumbar spine, this exercise is not for them. If they can't internally and externally load their hip, if they can't load and unload their hip, if they can't disassociate their spine, their pelvis, this is not for them. They need to be able to separate the hip joint from the center of the body in order to do this correctly. As an introduction to this exercise, the first time someone that was going to go over this is a very light ball. It's a 2-pound ball. Make sure you have a reinforced wall, like a concrete wall or a cinder block wall, where you have a partner to throw off of, so you don't put a hole in a wall. I've done that before. It's kind of funny. I'll show you the picture sometime. We're going to start with this light 2-pound ball. We're going to focus on staying neutral throughout the spine, and I'm just going to internally, externally rotate from the hip. And anytime you're using the med ball, we want to be able to catch this, use the momentum on the ball to load, use the elastic properties of the hip to snap back up. As I finish through, you can see there's some action in the backside, in the backside through the hip, or as my buddy Scott Pullen likes to say, let's get some action in the back section. He's a big Beastie Boys fan. Both of us are actually. So we're looking to get the hips engaged to drive us through with that. We're also staying relatively still in the transverse plane here. So we're using our transverse abdominis, internal, external oblique, our lumbar multifidi, all those great muscles that help to hold our trunk and keep intersegmental stability as well as lumbo-pelvic stability intact while we're loading and unloading the hip. So we just want to keep people engaged here where we load and move through the hip. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes coaches will teach individuals to use a heavier ball because it forces them to use their hip. I've heard coaches say that a lighter ball allows people to move with the spine. It's a coaching technique. I can't say whether that's right or wrong. I usually like to follow just basic motor learning principles. Start light, go heavy, start slow, then move fast. But if you find using a heavier weight helps an athlete get down into their hips, that's okay too. Again, it's a technique, and the only one that can say a technique is wrong is if they're watching the technique be employed and it doesn't work. Let's pick up the pace just a little bit here. So we'll move a little bit faster, and we can start to produce a little bit more force with that backside hip. We're still staying relatively neutral. Remember, we're very limited in the transverse plane motion of the lumbar spine. We have more to offer at the thoracic spine, but the hips, that's when the force and the power is coming from. Think about someone who's getting ready for their approach in golf and they're flexed forward like this at the thoracic spine. They're going to be forced to move more through the lumbar spine if they can't get the mobility that they need here. They can't get the mobility here to shift their weight to work on their balance. So I'm not talking about golf necessarily. It applies across the board, but if you're going to do anything that's catching and releasing any power style of movement, make sure you have the basics intact and their form is great.